Hi, my name's Elijah, and welcome to my podcast, Songwriting for Songwriters. My guest this week is Ian McNabb. Ian is a Mercury Prize nominated singer-songwriter and was frontman of 80s band The Icicle Works. He's got one of the most interesting and diverse, brilliant solo careers and is a cult figure. And he has a lot to say about songwriting. He's got a new album, New Brighton Rock, about to come out. And we talk about his process of songwriting, his love of songwriting, his non-judgmental view of music. He's really a fascinating man. So please check it out. Thanks for listening and subscribe. Okay, today joining me on my Songwriting for Songwriters podcast is Ian McNabb. How you doing, Ian?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very good, mate. Yes, I'm good. It's nice and sunny, isn't it? So soaking up the sunbeams.
Beautiful.
You just went off a second ago to turn the radio off, and I was just going to ask you a question based off that. Is it always on in your house? Did you grow up with music always around you?
I didn't really come from a musical family or anything, but I always remember Sundays we had the stereogram on.
Okay.
Most of the in the daylight, while my mother did the cleaning, and it was kind of we'd have stuff like Sinatra at the Sands was a big one.
Yeah.
The soundtrack albums we had, Oklahoma, Sound of Music.
Great.
And a couple of those albums, because stereo would just come out, so you'd have these albums that were like stereophonic breakthrough, incredible sounds, and she bought me when they came out. I remember having a 7-inch of She Loves You.
Great.
And we had Help, and that was it really. And I used to walk around singing She Loves You, but we weren't musical by any stretch. And I didn't really get into music until I was very much into the Apollo space program, and I was into Liverpool Football Club.
Yeah.
And things like that, going round on my chopper bike, wasn't really too fussed about pop music, because whenever I kind of came across it, it'd always be like, last night I heard my mama singing a song, ooh-wee, chirpy, and I just thought, oh, that's just juvenile, even though I was only like 9. And when eventually I saw Top of the Pops, and I saw Marc Bolan and T-Rex. I can't remember whether it was Metal Guru or Get It On or Telegram Sound, one of those, And I really thought, wow, this is different. And I just thought he looked amazing. And I thought, well, I like this.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was it. And then I started going to, Edward's secondhand record store on Kensington High Street, and buying up all the 7-inch singles for 15p each, and all of that, and that was it. And unlike most people who are happy to just do that, then of course I had to go to the source. So I got a guitar, and then I learned to play. This was when I was about 12.
Yeah.
So from about 12, 13 onwards, that's when the music never stopped. And I do have music on in the background, if it's not in the foreground. Usually I have it on 6 Music here in the UK, because they play quite a lot of new stuff, and I'm always quite keen to get into new stuff.
Oh, that's cool.
As well as some of the oldies that you don't mind hearing over and over again. So it's music's the number one thing. It always has been.
Do you think, going back, when you think about the kind of fairly sort of limited amount of records you said your parents had, do you think those in any way impacted you as a songwriter? Those early records, your first exposure to music, do you think they impacted you as a songwriter, looking back?
Well, I'd like to think so. There's actually a track, the first track on the new album, which I've just finished. called the album's called New Brighton Rock.
Yeah.
And a track on there called Hamilton Square. It's the opening track on the album. And it's very, very much the phrasing is Sinatra, and the arrangement, and a bit of Scott Walker in there, me in sort of ballad mode.
Yeah, lovely.
I played it to a couple of people, obviously, and they said, "Oh, your mum would be made up." It's very much in that kind of croony sort of thing. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've always, I'm not ashamed to show me influences and talk about them. Hopefully, my sound is me kind of interpreting what I believe to be great music, channeling it through me, and hopefully it's not a complete tribute. It's got quite a lot of me on it as well.
I think so. Like, because I was introduced to your songs by, I think we did have a mutual friend, the lovely Janice Long.
Oh yeah,
she was a beautiful soul, and she's very supportive of our band, and I know she was very supportive of you. So I first came across you in an interview with her and your songs via her Radio 2 show and her Radio Wales show.
Yeah.
And, got to know your stuff over time via Icicle Works, and a lot of what you've been saying over the last 2 or 3 years has aligned with what I think. And so I've been deep diving some of what you've been doing. But what I really love is the way you've just described, like the album Head Like a Rock, for example, which is absolutely brilliant. And
Thank you very much.
The kind of Crazy Horse Neil Young thing, but in no way at all is it a tribute. It's completely you in. Well, I guess it's. I'm thinking it's you exploring the Crazy Horse kind of area, but you are in the you're in that vein, but it's not at all like a kind of. It's
well,
totally
I'm very pleased you said that, because there was always the concern that it would be I'd be too much of a fanboy to make it anything but a tribute. But the difference is pretty clear. I mean, the guitars and the bass and drums have definitely got that Neil Young and Crazy Horse thing. Well, let's call it Crazy Horse, because after all, Neil Young doesn't sound like that with any other band,
Yeah.
And he's tried. Hello, Promise of the Real.
Yeah.
And but I sing completely differently than Neil Young. My writing sometimes like his, but it's very much me. It's that kind of baritone, sometimes tenor vocal, quite sort of showbiz vocal that I do. All of that,
Yeah.
I started, as my mum always used to say, you started off in cabaret and you could end up there as well,
That's right.
Which is always nice to know. And with a lot of the guitar solos, very much doffing the cap to Uncle Neil. But we only actually cut 4 tracks, but they're all so long that that's about 25 minutes it's half the album. And I think it's more me than Neil Young. And
it just sounds like who loves those records and has decided to get into that zone as a writer and a performer. And I mean, across your work of albums, I really like that you kind of everything's you, very clearly you, but you jump into like different sort of spaceships for a while and travel along a certain sonic, universe, and then come back and maybe do something else. But it's never like, okay, he's gone to like a completely different genre. It's all you doing you. It just sounds like your eternal universe of music is massive. You explore all of it, which is great.
Well, very kind words. I think it's probably contributed to my cult status, because it's very difficult to market. Well, I'm difficult. A couple of people have told me I'm unmarketable.
Okay.
In terms of the fact that if you kind of find something you're really good at and stick to it, kind of in the way that like Richard Hawley has.
Yeah.
Richard's got such a beautiful voice, and I love it when he does his big ballads, and I like his kind of country tinged things, country pop. Not so keen on what I can tell he really wants to do. which is basically being Echo and the Bunnymen, you know. And
Yeah.
it's more sort of stuff, new wave stuff like that. I don't particularly care for a great deal. I think there's other people doing enough of that.
Mm.
And sometimes it's good to kind of focus on what you're really good at. But I kind of get bored, you know. It's like when we did the first Icicle Works album, it was that was the most consistent set of songs, and they all sounded like they were by the same artist. Every song had a kind of similar lyrical theme. There were no guitar solos. There was a lot of tribal drums and kind of, you know, lyrics that were very metaphoric and very sixth form poetry, in my opinion now. Although I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I like sixth form poetry. It reminds me of when we were young.
Yeah.
And, you know, you don't have to be wise and mature to come up with good lyrics. So that was very consistent, and subsequently was the most successful thing that we ever did. In America, for instance, it was a success. Birds Fly was a bit of a hit. Well, it was a top 40 Billboard hit.
Yeah.
And then when we did the second album, I was into something else then, you know.
Okay.
And the American record company Arista heard the second Icicle Works album, which was called The Small Price of a Bicycle, and they said, "This sounds like punk rock demos," and they refused to put it out because it was.
Okay.
I mean, I saw it as a natural continuation of. I presume they wanted another album of you know, doe-eyed pop.
Yeah.
With all that kind of stuff, but I'd already done that, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, Birds Fly is, you know, without question, my most successful song.
Yeah.
It's the one that brings in the most money. Is how you judge the success on something from a point of view.
Yeah.
In that angle, I mean, I don't judge success on money at all. But
how do you judge? How do you judge success for a song? How do you define success for a song? If it's not financial, which I understand, there is that element of people resonating. But how do you personally, as a songwriter, judge success of your own work?
If I'm happy with it.
Yeah, good answer. Yeah.
And that's it, really. And if I'm really happy with it, and if I love it, then that's really successful.
Yeah.
And then if everybody else likes it as well, hey, you got a hit.
Do you love all your stuff? Like if you choose, like you've got a new album coming out, presumably the songs, you know, as a songwriter as well, I guess, like, I will only put forward songs I love to my band, and then if they love them, we'll do them. Do you love all the stuff you write, or do sometimes you just have to? Is it about some songs balance with the other songs you really love? You need something to balance with it.
That's a good point. For instance, on this new album,
yeah,
you will notice me talking about the new album.
Oh, we're going to get into that, yeah.
Okay. I had a bunch of songs, and I had a bunch of songs already written, but I always liked the idea of writing as I'm going along, like maybe you would with a screenplay or a novel.
Yeah.
You go, well, that's good. You know, we need something a bit to offset that. And I had all of these songs, and it was starting to go a little bit kind of, you know, serious. And I love the songs that are serious. And then I thought, well, I need a couple more serious ones. So I wrote a couple more serious ones, and then I listened to it all the way through. And it was like, well, it's all kind of a bit, you know, it's a bit too serious, you know.
Okay.
So I wrote a couple of songs that were a bit more lighthearted. I wrote a song called Interstellar Vehicle Has Landed in Port Sunlight, which is on the Wirral. And another one called Officer of the Watch, which I won't say the throwaway because they're not, but they're not talking about serious things that have happened to me. It's a bit of fun.
Yeah.
You know, it's a yellow submarine on the B side, on the other A side of Eleanor Rigby.
Yeah, which has its place, right?
So, and you know, and as I've listened to it, you know, 100 times, I'm going, there's going to be some people who say, oh, I love this album, but, you know, those tracks are a bit stupid, you know, wish you would have, you know, left this off or whatever, or this on. But it as a piece, it flows, you know, the ultimate thing, 40 minutes, 20 minutes aside, perfect art form. You balance it out. If you have too many slow ones or too many things about the same thing, people start getting a bit fidgety. You got to keep them in jump cuts. It's like with a movie, if you have a heavy scene and you're like, wow, cool. You don't follow it up with another heavy scene or a lot of waffle.
Yeah.
You throw a gag in, you know, and that's kind of how I try and put my albums together. And in answer to your other question, do I love every song that I put out? Well, I wouldn't put them out if I didn't at least like them. I mean, I love some,
yeah,
and I like a lot, and some I'm like, what the hell was I thinking there? You know. But I do think of the moment you have to kind of go with your instinct.
Yeah.
You know, you don't know. You really don't know. You're so close to it, you know. You don't really know. The only way that you find out is years later.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, like I realize now that some of the songs that I put out weren't the great ones. The ones I thought were kind of okay have become, you know, songs like Understanding Jane and Evangeline, to me, were just knocked off in as long as it takes to listen to them. And I just thought they were, you know, what was it Joe Walsh said? Hey, if I would have known that I was going to have to sing Rocky Mountain Way for the rest of my life, I wouldn't have wrote it. You know? But that's what happens at the time. So yeah, you try and keep your quality control. The best way to come out on top and make pretty good albums, I think, is if to always make sure that you have more songs than you need for an album.
Yeah, and
you
said something. You said something the other day actually on your Facebook about minimizing the live performance down towards you playing acoustically, because you can kind of change gears quickly, change from song to song, drop a song, move forward. How important is it for you? And obviously, you've got such a kind of massive body of work, and you've got a new album coming out, New Brighton Rock, and so your fans are going to want to hear that. Obviously, hear the record, but they're going to want to hear a lot of your past stuff as well when you play live. How important is it for you to play new material live? And can you tell? Does the song have a kind of? Do you see it in a different way? Does it have a different life when you play it live?
I saw that thing Noel Gallagher just did with it, talking about his songs and his gear for about an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And I watched it and I really enjoyed it. And I thought he said a pretty good thing. He goes, you know, I'm going off on tour for 2.5 years. I've done this album. And so we'll rehearse and there'll be 5 tunes that will immediately go into the set. And then in 2 weeks, 2 of them will get kicked out.
Right.
Because we won't get the reaction that I think they're going to get, because you don't know until they're out there, you know, and then it's not your property. It's fascinating to me. Sometimes you can never really tell. I'll be doing a gig and we'll do either solo or with the band, and we'll do a song and I'll just think, this is fucking fantastic, you know, I'm really cooking here. And the song will finish and you'll get a golf clap, you know.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And you'll be like, and then I'll go, Evangeline.
Yeah.
Or, you know, I'm having trouble, or we are. And then I do something that I think is incredibly profound and beautiful, usually on the piano.
There is a different feeling on the piano.
There's a point in the show whereby as soon as I put my guitar down and walk off to the piano, I see quite a bit of this going on.
just the video here, Ian.
So that's why there's only ever 2 piano numbers in the show, you know.
Okay.
But you don't really know, and my thing is I'm always trying to get better and trying not to repeat yourself, and that's difficult.
Yeah.
When you've been going 40 years. I mean, I think it's difficult after one album.
Yeah.
Not to repeat yourself. I mean, the first Icicle Works album, absolutely. it was the whittling down of all the songs that we've been playing since we started. We binned loads of them, even up to the last minute. And then the American record company still managed to take a track off and put something else on and mix the running order up, you know, because that's what I don't know if they still do it, but they used to do it a lot. And we played them hundreds of times, and we knew when it was right and blah, 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 all of those things. 10 songs, 40 minutes plus a bit. And that's it. That was everything that we were. And then, and you've heard this 1,000 times, but you come to the second album when first of all, you've been touring the first album to death. So you're not at home, you're not really in writing mode. You're on tour, which is probably not the best place to write songs. Although I've done it. And then, yeah, and the record company needed by Christmas, you know, so there's less, there's less time.
Yeah.
And, you know, all of those. And so I think even I remember when we were doing the first album and Chris Sharrock, our drummer, said, "Oh God, I hope we don't have to do this again for a long time." And it's like, well, we're going to have to do one as soon as we stop touring this one, you know.
Yeah.
You know, I find it very easy to write songs as long as I'm not trying to write songs, you know. I'll never get up and go, right, we need.
I feel the same way about it.
Sorry?
I feel the same way.
Yeah.
You just said something which I think is really interesting, and I think I feel the same way, which is if I sit down to write a song, it'll be all right. But if I catch something or something inspires me to do it, it's a whole different universe. So when songs arrive for you, how do they normally arrive, and how do they turn up?
Well, it's the zone, isn't it? It's the tear in the time-space continuum. I always say the muse is female, and she's fickle, and she chooses she's a woman. The muse is a woman, and the woman chooses the time, the place, and the yay or the nay.
Brilliant.
And that is a fact of life. Get used to it, deal with it. That's what all art is about. And I'll be kind of going, yeah, did it? Oh, wow, but hang on, I was in the middle of, I've got to do that, I've got to pay this bill. No. She wants me, and off I go. And it'll usually be very often keyed by hearing somebody else on the radio, and you go, damn, that's great. I want a song like that. And then you kind of, the energy of it comes into it, but you're not ripping it off. I mean, I've rewritten You Only Get What You Give by the New Radicals about 20 times, you know, just that effervescence. You only want more. Damn, I wish I would have written that. And there's been a few attempts at writing something in a similar vibe.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing that I always do, which is very useful and is a tip to budding songwriters, is that if you get a good turn of phrase or a title, make a note of it.
Yeah.
Because and then when you're strumming around or you're on the piano or whatever, however you write, and then you open up your little list. Ooh, that's a good title. And then you try to marry what you're doing now to the title, because there's nothing more boring than having a song title that says, you know, I saw her, or, you know, do you know what I mean? It's like a really good title will maybe push a floating voter into having a listen to it, you know.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Like the Ian McNabb album lands on their desk, and first of all, you got the album title. Yeah. That's got to be good as well. And then if they look at the titles and it goes, I saw her, or, you know, I this, that, or, you know, blah, blah, just kind of generic utility titles. They go, okay, you know, if you have like, you know, something like Interstellar Vehicle has landed in Port Sunlight, or something like that, or something like, they go, what the, I've got to hear that, you know, and that's part of it. But no, I mean, I've had some horrendous experiences when I've been asked to sit down and write with other people.
Okay.
at 1:30 on a Wednesday afternoon in somebody's office, or a house or a studio, and it's like, right, we got to write a song. I mean, and you just like, I can't do that. I really can't. And if I'm writing with other people, which I do occasionally,
Yeah.
I can't be in the room with them because they just get in the way. If they send, I've written a few things with other people. I wrote with Peter Buck.
Yeah.
He just sends me, because he doesn't sing or do top line. He just comes up with guitar riffs and chords and all that. And I go, oh, okay, so I'll sing my thing over that. Or sometimes somebody, I've just started doing another writing thing with Ralph, the drummer out of Crazy Horse.
Brilliant.
And he likes to write lyrics.
Okay.
So I'll go, okay. And then I'll kind of try and marry them with some nice chords I've got lying around. But there's no way I could sit there or even do a Zoom thing.
Right.
Because you just go, and then, so what if, I just can't. It's like people saying you go into the toilet, It's too personal.
Yeah, it's very intimate, isn't it?
I don't like to go, there it is. I don't like to go,
Yeah, I think it's got to be a pretty special, unique relationship to eyeball someone and work through a song. It's got to be, you've got to be pretty relaxed with them and intimate. So, New Brighton Rock, which is a great title for an album, and you've mentioned it a bit earlier on that there's some serious sort of songs on that. So I'm really interested to know, particularly because I've been following you on Twitter the last few years, and I've just been very interested to know what you're singing about, what these songs are about, what's been going on, what's serious. Give us an overview, us and the fans, an overview of what.
Well, I mean, I've always been determined from the start to not write anything about lockdowns or the pandemic.
Cool.
Because I, like everybody else, would rather forget that ever happened,
Yes. Yeah, good.
Don't want to be reminded of it. So what do I write about? Well, obviously one of the most significant things that's happened to me in the past couple of years is my mother died.
Yeah.
Which I've alluded to on a couple of songs, but I don't want to get into one of those. This is the album where he sings about his dead mother,
Sure.
Because I don't want that, and I'm sure that the fans, God bless them, would give me the respect of listening to it.
Yeah.
But maybe some of them will take something from it, because everybody has to deal with bereavement at some point. Yeah. But it ain't really.
It's not the
stick on when you're having a beer,
Yeah.
So there's a couple of songs on there's one song on the new album that alludes to that, and there was one or two on the last one, and that's it. There's a song called Hamilton Square, the opening track of the album, which is about a place just across the River Mersey on the Wirral in Birkenhead, which is a very beautiful thing to look at. It looks as great as it sounds. If you Google Hamilton Square, you can see it, but it's where a lot of drug addicts hang out, and like that. So it's got that darkness to it.
Yeah.
And there's a song called Cheerfulness, which is about cheerfulness, and there's whistling on it, because I always love that thing that Leonard Cohen said, cheerfulness keeps breaking through. Yeah. Whatever kind of situation you're in, however sad or bad with whatever's going on, there's always a chink of light, Yeah. There's a song called Outrider, which is about, an outrider is a motorcycle cavalcade that goes along with a car and protects it. So that's me talking about how that, metaphorically, how that's important. There's the song which is about my mum, which is called Gone, which I've just explained. There's an instrumental called Salmon Butties, because that's what I always used to make for my mum in the afternoon, and it's just a little interlude. It's beautiful. There's a song called The Bliss, which was a phrase that I heard George Harrison's talking about once. He goes, we're all trying to find the bliss, be it through, doing it without alcohol or drugs or anything, doing it through meditation or, becoming at one with yourself, that, that perfect, the best thing ever is to be straight and be happy. And like a beautiful day like today, that's the greatest feeling. I'm feeling good.
Yeah.
Health is wealth.
Yeah.
So that's the bliss. There's a song called "Don't Shoot the Wounded." And what's that about? That's about people who keep falling into toxic relationships over and over again, sometimes with the same people.
Yeah.
Is it about me? Maybe. Is it about you? Maybe. There's a cover on the album of Foreigner's "I Want to Know What Love Is."
Amazing.
Which I absolutely love. And think, oh God, no, you haven't done that, have you? We've done our own spin on that. It really fits the mood of the album.
It's a great song.
It is a great song. It's a classic. And there's a song called "Officer of the Watch," which is kind of about some shady characters on a Mediterranean cruise. That once again, it's like it's me trying to do something a bit different, not talking about myself all the time.
Yeah.
There's the song about the spaceship landing on the Wirral, which I've told you about. And there's the last song on there. There's 11 tracks on the album. The last song is called "A New Adventure," and my friend and producer and co-writer Kieran Bell said to me, "Come on, man, we need him. He's good at doing this." So, when we've kind of got everything in place, you go, "We need a banger for side 2," or, you cheer up, or, we need something heavy, or,
Yeah.
And he goes, "Oh, write me a song like something like "Into the Great Wide Open" by Tom Petty. Write something like that. Just makes you want to get up, go out, So I wrote this song called A New Adventure, which took me about a minute. And it's all about putting all the darkness behind you and getting on with it. And it's never too late. And it's very positive, So that's what I'm writing about at the moment.
Fantastic, man. That sounds amazing. Thank you for giving us a little brief synopsis of each track. It's really nice to hear you talk about that. It's really good. And how do you feel about the album now? Well, you've done it, and it's released very soon, isn't it? I've seen pre-orders going out.
Well, it's being mastered at the moment, which I'm excited about. So hopefully I'll get that next week, and I can sit and listen to it again.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you on to the next one now?
If you're a practitioner yourself, you know the amount of times that from the writing of it to the recording of it, and then the arrangement, and then the mixing, and then the mastering.
Yeah.
And it's like I've never kept track. I've often thought about having a clicker just as an experiment, just to see how many times I listen to one of my songs.
Yeah. But what's weird about it though, like we released an album called The Wild Light just in the year of the pandemic, which is timing was whatever it was. But anyway, even the process, every time it's different, isn't it? You hear it hundreds of times, but I remember like the final master of this album, we all sat down and had to listen to it, and it sounded completely different from every other
God. And what gets me is you can stick it on and flatter it with dark lights and loads of volume, and you go, and you don't get a hit off it, and you're like, oh, it's not that good.
Yeah.
It's just not that good. And then you go into a depression, and then you listen to it the next day, and it's fantastic. But that's just your internal arrangement.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that's when you listen to something in so much detail. I know that I listen to my music many more times than anybody else is going to.
Yeah.
And it's like you start picking up on things that nobody else is ever going to hear. And sometimes I frequently let a mistake or something that's a bit off or wrong go through.
Okay.
Just to see if anybody notices. And by and large, they never do. And that even goes down to there was on the album I did a couple of years ago, an album called Utopian.
Yeah.
I'd written all the lyrics out, and there was a song on there called Going to a Place, and I wrote 3 verses. And then when I recorded the vocal, because I redid the vocal, I wasn't happy with it, and I was looking at the wrong version of it, and I just sang 2 verses.
Yeah.
And I thought that was fine, and it went out. But on the lyric, on the the CD jacket and the vinyl, was the 3rd verse.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
And I thought somebody will notice that, and nobody's ever mentioned
No
it.
one's noticed it. Well, you think somebody might have noticed that one. That's
Well, they will now, won't they?
yeah, they will now. Listen, I've got some fan questions for you actually, because when I started this podcast, I started recording. I don't know. I got to like episode 6 or 7. I put out to some people, who would you like me to get in touch with? And it was just like there's something like 20 comments. There's Ian McNabb, Ian McNabb, Ian McNabb, Ian
Oh,
McNabb.
fantastic!
Which is great. They all want to, everybody.
Thank you.
I'm really big.
Thanks, guys, from me.
It's amazing. So let me just ask a few quick fan questions. Peter James, first of all, says, "Can you lend him a tenner?"
Yeah, if he wants it,
Yeah, okay, that's nice. Okay, Austin says, "Will you rework any more of your previous work, either individual tracks or albums?
Will I what?
Will you rework any of it?"
Well, I did that with a couple of years ago with an album called Ascending, which before the Icicle Works made the first album, we were a slightly different band. We were kind of electro. We were sort of very influenced by early Human League and Soft Cell,
Yeah,
and John Fox and Bebop Deluxe, and we were into that kind of thing. And then that kind of went, and then we became what was basically demonstrated with the first album. But there was about 6 or 7 tunes, and it was only ever on a cassette, recorded very, very poorly. And it was coming up to the 40th anniversary of that, and I thought, oh, let me have a listen to that and see what it's like, because those songs never got recorded properly.
okay.
So I re-recorded them with a modern sheen, and I was very pleased I could still sing them in the same key.
Legend.
And that was a lot of fun to do. I think maybe that whoever asked that question is alluding to that.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know, because I've tried re-recording songs before, and sometimes it's worked. I did an album called Krugerrands in 2015, which was like rock and roll stripped down versions of songs that I'd done either overproduced or underproduced in the past, and that came out really well. But sometimes what is great about the track that people like is in the version that's already out there,
Yeah.
And even though you go, oh God, I hate that snare drum sound, it's so fucking 80s, or oh God, it's too compressed, or it's the guitars are wrong, or I'm over singing, or I'm under singing, or it was done too quickly, or we took too long on it. All the criticisms you can level at a track. And then I've tried to re-record it, and then I go, do you know what? It's fine as it is. That's the document of what it was. Yeah. Just leave it. So I don't know. I mean, my next project is doing an album of Fleetwood Mac songs.
Oh wow, that's a great idea.
Because I just think they're one of the most unusual bands.
Yeah, definitely.
In terms of the amount of members that have been through them, but unlike, say, a band like The Fall, where they were all sidemen,
yeah,
or the Lars, or the Waterboys, bands that have had one central figure and a cast of other people coming in and leaving. Fleetwood Mac have had people in and put them up front.
Yeah, I know.
No, which I think is pretty unusual. I can't think of another band where that's happened. Like when Peter Green left, they got these Bob Welsh in and other people, and they made about 6 records where it was like a different band, a different guitar player or singer. Christine McVie was always there, Mick Fleetwood and John V was always there, but the rest of them was just a floating thing. And there's some really great songs that they did in that period. But at the same time, I'm not afraid of retooling a number one classic, and I'm not afraid of doing a couple of Peter Green songs. And so that's what I'm working on now. So that's kind of retooling.
That's a great.
Beyond that, I'm not sure what's going to go down.
Do you write all the time, your own songs all the time, or do you have to? I mean, you said about the muse, the mistress, the muse turns up and does what she does. But is that a daily thing for you, or is it just as and when it happens?
No, I do absolutely as little as possible every day. And I don't have a guitar in me where I can see it. I've got my piano there, which I can't really hide. But no, I just try and keep away from all that and do other things. And I don't pick the guitar up and strum while I'm watching the telly. No, I'll do that when I always say I do it when I have to, which is actually true because I need some songs. So I'll which is not to contradict what I said before about the muse chooses you. I will be aware that I need to have a piece of paper and a pen and my guitar because I can tell I'm in the zone, But no, I don't get up every day and do that. I'll like, especially now when this album's just finished, I'd like, which is one of the reasons why I'm doing the Fleetwood Mac thing, because I've got a lot of time on my hands now because I was a full-time carer for my mother.
Right.
And I don't have to do that anymore. So, I mean, that was from like 7 a.m. till 12 midnight every day. It was a real job, and I couldn't leave the house for more than half an hour tops. So now I've got all this leisure time and it's fantastic, but I do still need something to do. What did they say? If you can't make a man happy, at least keep him busy. So that's why I'm going straight into the Fleetwood Mac thing. But that also means I don't have to think about writing new songs.
Yeah, get a bit of space to just
until she decides.
Yeah. A question that came in actually, and was something I've been thinking about. Because Liverpool is such a huge city of music, and obviously we all know the Beatles. But like, how would you say Liverpool has impacted you as a songwriter, if it has?
Well, I don't know really, because I don't come from anywhere else. If I came from Loughborough, maybe it'd be different. But there's certainly, there's always been, Liverpool's a music town, possibly even the music town.
Yeah.
And from the age of, like I said, when I was 12, I started learning to play, and by the age of 15, I was in a cabaret band, playing working men's clubs every weekend. From 15, I mean, I can't believe that, but it is true. And everybody it was all about music, and that's all we ever spoke about. And then when the punk and new wave thing came along, it went into a whole new area, because Liverpool in particular just used so many bands, especially around like the end of the 70s and the beginning of the 80s. I mean, every motherfucker was in a band. I didn't know anybody that wasn't in a band, or if they weren't in a band, they were working with a band. If they were an artist, they were doing sleeves for them. If they had a fucking transit van, they were driving them. And if they weren't doing anything else, they became roadies. And, and this was like everybody you knew. And there were so many venues. The beer was cheap. It cost 75 pence to get into a gig. The Royal Court Theatre in Liverpool, I used to go to anything that was on there because it was like £2.50 a ticket, because that was when artists went on tour to sell records. They didn't put records out so they could go on tour, and the idea was that you'd go and see them. They wouldn't make much money at the gig, but you'd go and buy their record, and then they'd get in the charts, and then they'd get a bit bigger, and all that kind of thing. So Liverpool, an amazing place, I know that we had a rough time in the 80s politically, as did we all, thanks to the Tories and Thatcher and what have you. But also, I'm a firm believer in the fact the worse things get, the better the music is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, there's been an awful lot of great music made in sunny climes. I love the Eagle. I fucking love the Eagles, man. You know, but Anarchy in the UK was made in, you know, grim, grey Britain.
Yeah.
You know, and I think, I don't know, it's a bit cliche to say, but I think it's got a bit more realism. Music coming from, you know, you get songwriters from New York have got a lot more to say than somebody who lives in Laurel Canyon.
Yeah, sure.
Because, you know, they're going to pick the guitar up and go and sit in the garden, smoke a doob. Whereas, you know, somebody walking a few blocks in New York is probably going to get mugged, you know.
Yeah.
So I know what I'm saying.
No, I know. I understand. Thank you for the answer. What songwriters do you rate nowadays? Who do you hold up as a whether they don't have to be new songwriters, they could be classic songwriters, but who do you hold up as being great examples of songwriting that you love?
Well, I don't know if they're new or not. I'm a huge fan of Paul Westerberg
Okay.
from The Replacements, and he hasn't done anything for a while. Gosh, I suppose I've got to quantify this by saying who do I listen to. But like I say, I listen to the stuff on the radio, and if I hear something I really like, I'll first of all go on YouTube and check them out, and then I'll check the album out on Spotify, and if I dig it, I'll buy a vinyl copy or a CD.
Nice.
Probably more likely a vinyl, because as much as I love CDs, I've only got one CD player, which is in the car. New artists that, you know, I know that there's a lot of them out there, and I probably haven't heard enough of them, but I you know, I tend to fall back a bit onto the artists that I've liked for the past 10 years. You know, whenever they say this is a great new singer-songwriter, and it's somebody young, and I'll have a listen to it, and I usually like it because it reminds me a lot of stuff that I've liked previously. So I'll listen to a bit of that, and then fuck it, I'll just stick Tom Petty on, you know. So I can't really give you any names.
Well, what
Well,
songwriters
what I've been listening to this week is I've been listening to a band called The Vines.
Yeah.
Alien band, or they're from New Zealand, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I really like them. I always listen to a lot of Paul Westerberg. I've been listening to Rod Stewart's 70s albums.
Yeah.
The Faces I've been listening to this week. And just before I went out this morning, I put on Reproduction by the Human League, you know. And I've just bought these new Wharfdale speakers in me listening room, and got some spectacular lights, you know. So as soon as the sun down, it's coming down, light a few candles, get the lights on, and honest to God, it's louder than a gig with the volume I listen, because I'm in a detached house. Thank you very much. And there's no one else living here but me, you know.
Fantastic.
So, and the neighbours are far away, so I can crank it up.
Awesome, man.
So that's what I've been listening to today.
Okay, well, let me ask you a question again in a slightly different way. What songwriters impacted you the most as a songwriter?
Just one sec while I plug this in. It's going to die. Hang on.
Well, no worries.
My computer. Sorry about that.
Not at all.
These Macs are great. They get old, and then you just burn through the power.
Yeah.
Right. Sorry, what were you saying?
So the same question again, but slightly different. What songwriters impacted you the most as a songwriter? Who made you want to write songs? Who were those writers?
Oh God, everyone.
Yeah.
I don't differentiate, and I think I've got like broader taste than, in fact, I know I have
Yeah,
broader taste than pretty much anybody I know, you know.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
The only thing I don't care for is rap and hip hop
Okay.
because it's rhythmic, but it's not very musical.
Yeah.
You know, I just think they wear me out, those records, you know,
Okay.
because it's not, there's no melody, it's people talking or shouting or whispering. But apart from that, everything's fair game. I'm a songwriter, so you know, I can appreciate anything that I think is a great tune to me personally. And I'm not a snob, you know. I don't, just because it's by Ed Sheeran or Taylor Swift or something like that doesn't mean it's not valid.
Great.
Because I think that the hardest thing to do is not to write a 10-verse epic that's incredibly profound. I think the hardest thing to do is write a 3-minute
Yeah.
pop song that
Yeah.
just hits you from the get-go.
Yeah.
I mean, I was driving back from town this morning. I had to go and see my solicitor to do a will. Anyway, and She Loves You came on the radio, and it was just like, my God, every second of that song is not wasted. It's like the she loves you, yeah, yeah. I mean, when they're not singing, the guitar goes da 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 da, and when they go, she loves you, and you know that can't be bad. Bring, bring, bring. There's
Yeah. Yeah.
hook in every second of that song.
Yeah.
And I don't know how long it is, but I'm guessing it's probably like 2:04 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
And that to me is what it's all about.
Yeah.
And to be able to pack all that information into, and it all be great and to make sense. And there's no bit in it where you go, yeah, yeah, come on, come on, come on, come on, you know. But I like songs like that as well. But I do think that that's always the ultimate goal. You know, when you think that like those albums that came out in the 60s by the likes of the Beatles and the Stones and the Who and the Kinks and, you know, the Hollies and all those guys, you know, they had like 12, 14 songs on a piece of vinyl.
Yeah.
And when they all came out on CD, you realize that the running time was like 32 minutes, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like,
It's an art form, man. It's a total art form. Something which I agree with you. So I've been a huge Beatles fan, so I've always been aware of trying to write ideas into short form, and it's a definite skill set, isn't it, to try and use hooks and write quickly or write within a short amount of time. It's a different skill set.
and get the information across.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, you know, something like Jet, you know, every second that is catchy.
It's crazy.
There's your intro. Straight in on it, opens with the chorus. Jet. I can hardly remember the Mama, I want Jet to always do. It's just like
So true.
even a second where you can kind of look away, you know, and that's what I aspire to. I mean, you know, McCartney for me is it.
Mate, it's true. It just carries on, doesn't it? It's like,
Mate, I want Jet to always love me.
such a tune. It's such a tune. He's just like, I mean, he is, like you said, he is where it's at. I mean, I'm probably a bit more Lennon than Macca just because I find, just because that's the way it is. But McCartney is like a machine of melody. It's unbelievable how he kind of still doing.
And also, I mean, you know, I mean, there's so many we could go on about, but you know, like something like Wouldn't It Be Nice by the Beach Boys, you know. I mean, that's even got time to slow down in the middle. And it's like 2 minutes and 28 seconds, if that.
Yeah.
I don't sit there with a stopwatch, but
yeah,
you know, that is it. But then again, you know, I'm a big Floyd fan, you know, I love bloody 26 minutes of echoes. You know, it's just a different thing.
Well, it's absolutely. Or Cortez, like Cortez Killer, just like that long form of that is great, and it's like
Well, like the vocal doesn't come in for 3 minutes, you
no.
know.
Yeah, yeah,
And I'm just thinking, you know, when he used to turn those records into reprise records, what they must have said. Because the funny thing with Neil is that it's like he joined Crosby, Stills and Nash, who'd already had a #1 album, and then he did After the Gold Rush and Harvest, which was his big album.
yeah.
And I listened to Harvest recently because it was the 50th, and it's 50th, is it? Yeah, anniversary. And I went to see that film he made about it, the documentary. And it is, I mean, it was never particularly my favourite Neil Young album, but you can see why people love it. He's singing in tune for a kickoff.
Yeah.
And it's pretty mellow. It maintains, you know, the mood. It digresses a little at times. Basically, he doesn't scare floating voters off.
Yeah.
And then he was, you know, that record sold like 2 million copies in America, and then he just started doing what the hell he wanted, and it must have confounded, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Imagine them saying, "Hey man, can you not write another fucking Heart of Gold?" You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, well, I've already done that. I mean, I had that a lot with Birds Fly Whisper to a Scream.
Right.
Certainly in America, people wanted me to write another one, and I'm like, well, there's two things wrong with that. Firstly, I've already done it. Secondly, if I do it, it'll remind people of Birds Fly Whisper to a Scream, but it won't be as good.
Right.
So what's the point?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I'll get criticized for just churning out the same shit, you know. Whereas if I do something different, at least they can have a go at me for it not being very good, but they can't have a go at me for repeating myself, you know.
But
he never wrote another song that sounded remotely like Walk on the Wild Side because he'd done it, you know.
But one of those things where, like, when I was at art college as a teenager, and you'd get turned on to Velvet Underground by someone and go and dig deep into it, and there'd be a whole load of stuff to get into. And it's the same with your stuff, because I've been listening to it over the last 2 or 3 weeks. You can go and you just can lose yourself for weeks in your back catalogue, which you keep adding to. And so, it's great that you keep doing different things. I think it's true artistry. So thank you for that.
Thanks for your kind words. Appreciate it.
A couple more questions, especially before the hour's up, my friend. One more question from a fan. Cobber is his name, I believe. If love is a wonderful color, what color is it?
Well, once again, that was. I mean, it doesn't mean anything. Love is a wonderful color. It's, you know, that was one of the things that certainly around the new wave era, late 70s, early 80s, where you couldn't be too specific. It had to be kind of dressed in metaphor and mystique, you know. See Teardrop Explodes, Echo and the Bunnymen, you know, The Cure. You know, we couldn't go, I love you so much, you know. I mean, I know for a fact that the Bunnymen had a rule whereby they couldn't. Will Sargent said, I'm not playing on anything that's got love in the title.
Wow, okay.
You know, so Ian McCulloch had to, you know, go in pretending that the back of Love was called Taking Advantage. And that went right up to when he had to fill out the form for the publishing or write on the tape box what it was. Wow. Taking Advantage, because, and then when it was called the back of Love, it was like, oh, God, no. We've got love in a title. Oh, God, you know, because that's how it was. I wasn't scared of using the word love. In fact, I used it 3 times on the first album. And love is a wonderful color doesn't actually mean anything. I think Mick Head, who was in the Pale Fountains and Shack, the great Mick Head, he had a song called Love. I saw a review and it said a song called Love is Such a Beautiful Place. And I never caught up with the song, but I just thought, that's such a great title. I'm going to nick that and put my own spin on it. So love is a wonderful colour. And when people are quoting it back at me, they always get the title wrong. It gets called Love is Full of Wonderful Colours. Or, you know, they always get it slightly wrong. I just call it Love is a WC.
There we go. We should
But
different
I,
meaning.
I don't have an answer to that question. It's dressed in metaphor, and it was supposed to sound profound, and
It does
and I was 22.
It does sound profound, and it's great. That was actually Nigel Richardson who asked that question, just to be clear. So one last question. Thank you very much for your time. I've really enjoyed talking to you, and I can't wait to hear.
Thanks for asking me.
Okay, so I ask each person this as a final question. So if you could have written someone else's song, if that had been in your head, if the muse had knocked on your door with it, what song would you have loved to have written or lived with inside your head?
So which song would I have liked to have written?
Yeah, someone else's song.
Yeah. Well, obviously, I could come up with a load, but I'd whittle it down to two for now, and it'd be either You've Lost That Loving Feeling by the Righteous Brothers, or River Deep Mountain High by Icicle.
Brilliant. Brilliant answer.
So do I have to pick one? Okay, it'll be God Only Knows by the Beach Boys.
Yeah, that's something else. Ian, thank you so much.
Opening line, talk about putting somebody on the back foot, I may not always love you.
I know, that's like, I've thought about that way too much. But it's quite.
Tell me after I wrote that lyric. I may not always love you. What an incredible way to open.
Yeah.
One of the greatest love songs of all time.
I agree, it's amazing.
So that one.
Thank you for your time, mate. Have a great day.
And you have a great weekend.
Thanks, Ian. Take care.
Bye for now.